Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So for this video right here, I want to continue the discussion that we started yesterday during the Google Hangout. For those of you who have not seen that Google Hangout, I will include a link in the card so that you can watch it for yourself. I want to take out time right now to shout out all the people who participated in the panel discussion. Shout out to LA, shout out to Psycho, shout out to Hollow Point, shout out to the sister, Miss Bailey. I appreciate your participation, your comments, and your contribution to the discussion. Also, I'll shout out the chat room, shout out to the brother Garage Autonomous, Lashid for you, and other people who participated in the chat room. So, for this video right here, I want to go into more detail about how we can fight white supremacy. That's what I want to talk about. The first thing we need to do is educate ourselves. Without knowledge of self, you can't fight white supremacy. White supremacy has a grip on our minds. It has chains on our minds. So the first thing that we have to do is shatter those chains of white supremacy that are wrapped around our minds. And the only way you can do that is by educating yourself and by getting knowledge of self. And I think that that's where these YouTube channels are crucial. We can spread information to enlighten more people and to inspire more people. So that's the first way that you fight white supremacy. The second way that you fight white supremacy is through organization. And this is a point that the great Pan-Africanist Kwame Ture emphasized time and time again. Every time I heard him speak, he talked about the need for Black people, for African people to organize. Because you can't change anything if you're not organized. You can't change anything if you don't mobilize. And one of the first things that we need to do in order to be organized is to join an organization that is fighting for our people, fighting for Black empowerment and Black liberation. And if you don't see an organization that is out here doing what you want them to do or taking strong enough positions, create your own organization. Be the leader that you want to see in the world. That's what we need to do. So we must organize. These white supremacists are organized. They have groups. They have events that they have participated in and organized. And we have to be better organized than they are if we are to defeat them. The second thing, another thing that we need to do is vote. We must register to vote. Each and every one of us needs to register, and we need to actually vote in every single election, on the local level, on the state level, and on the federal level. And again, that goes back to the whole point about education. We need to educate ourselves about the issues, educate ourselves about the candidates, educate ourselves so that we can make an informed decision when we go to the polls and vote. And in addition to just voting, we need to run candidates that support our positions and our interests. That's what we have to do. And we have to hold these candidates accountable for what they say and what they do. Our votes are so important. The fact that we have this man in the White House, Donald Trump, just proves to us how important actually voting is, because we are seeing the disastrous effects of having this damn white supremacist sympathizer in the White House. We see it every day. So we have to defeat these people politically, defeat them in Congress, defeat them on a local level, prevent them from seizing political power. That's what we have to do. Another thing that we need to do is actually build in our community. Build institutions in our community. Build businesses in our community, schools in our community. Control the institutions in our community. That's what we have to do. That's what Brother Malcolm taught us about. The need for us to control our communities. Often you will hear people talk, all this fantasy island talk about separation. Instead of talking about some distant fantasy that's never going to materialize, because most of us are not going back to Africa or going back to anywhere. We are going to be here. That's the bottom line. So as long as we're here, we need to take control over the land beneath our feet, as the brother Amiri Baraka talked about. Seize control over our communities and over our lives. That's what we have to do by building and maintaining institutions in our community. Another thing that we need to do is defend ourselves and our families and our communities. That's what we need to do on all kinds of levels, spiritually, socially, culturally, and physically. Yes, physically. The days of black people just being beaten by these white supremacists and these cops, that day needs to be over. That day should have been over decades ago. Again, Brother Malcolm X told us about this. And there's nothing radical about self-defense. There's nothing extreme about defending yourself. That is only intelligent. That's only what any kind of reasonable, intelligent person does. That's what intelligent people do. No nation that is respectable would allow somebody to attack them without defending themselves. All nations, most nations have armies, they have air forces, they have Marines and navies and all that kind of stuff to defend themselves, to defend their interests, to defend their people. And it's about time that black people defend themselves. So defense is key in order to fight against white supremacy. Another thing that is very important is coalitions, building coalitions with other groups of people around common interests and mutual respect. We need to build coalitions if we are to defeat these people. If we are to defeat them politically, we need to have coalitions with other groups of people. All these groups have been targeted by these white supremacists. Black people have been targeted, Jews have been targeted, immigrants have been targeted, Muslims have been targeted by these hate groups, women have been targeted. So it only makes sense for all those targets to unite against a common enemy, and that's white supremacy and these hate groups. We have a common interest against these groups, and we should organize with people around those common interests. This is not about singing Kumbaya and being ignorant. It's about doing what is in our best interest. And, you have a lot of people who are narrow-minded, who are bigoted, who don't think that you should work with any white people, who view all white people as the devil or as, evil albinoids or caucasoids or pale skins and all this other, derogatory terms people use. I mean, these people that use that kind of terminology, they're just as ignorant and just as bigoted as these races that they are speaking out against. They're just the same. They are the hate that hate produced. And the fact of the matter is, you have white people, you have Hispanic people, you have Asian people, some who are willing to join our struggle. And we should not be so closed-minded that we don't realize that reality. The people, if you look, and then you have people who say that that's not the case, but if you look at just that demonstration in Charlottesville, you will see that there were white people out there protesting against these white supremacists on the front lines, while you have these YouTube personalities who never marched in anything, who never participated in any kind of protest. All these people do is entertain you with black power rhetoric. So you had these white people on the front lines sacrificing, you had the woman who was killed by white supremacists. And you had our people out there on the front lines. We should not sit this thing out. We can't afford to. We can't afford to let these white supremacists build their numbers, build their organization, build their momentum while we sit on the sidelines. And these same people who are urging you and me to sit on the sidelines are the same people who whine and cry about white supremacy, but when it's time to actually do something about it, they have no action in them. All they have is rhetoric, and that's not going to cut it anymore. Later for rhetoric, it's time for action. And talking about action, we need to confront these white supremacists. That's another way that we can combat white supremacy, by confronting it. Physically confronting it, politically confronting it, confronting it. We can't afford to sit at home anymore. We need to get off of our asses and get out in these streets and put in that work. That's what we have to do. Also, we need to use petitions more. You know, we need to petition, for instance, for Steve Bannon to be removed from the White House, to be fired, because he is a blatant and open white supremacist. So we should organize to have people like him fired. And I think that if there's enough pressure, then that's a possibility. And the last thing that I'll say is this, you know, in terms of how we can fight white supremacy. And it's something that's very creative that I heard about involving these protests that took place in Virginia. What people have done is they have circulated photographs of these white supremacists so that people could identify who these people are, so that they can be held accountable for their hatred. So they could be held accountable, and some of them have lost their jobs, and rightfully so. These people need to be targeted and neutralized in every conceivable way, and one way is to let the world know who they are. And let these companies make a decision. Do they want to have people who are racist, who are anti-Semitic? Do they want to have those kind of people working for them? That's what they have to ask themselves. So we need to expose these people, continue to circulate their photographs all over the internet. So those are just some ways that I think that we can fight white supremacy. Tell me what you think. Are there some things that I missed? Some other ways that we can fight white supremacy? Please let me know. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.